President Bashar al-Assad sends a message to Pope Francis. Syrian Arab army units eliminate dozens of terrorists in several areas and achieve new field progress. According to CNN, the West supports terrorism in Syria and fears repercussions. And in Turkey, demonstrations continue calling on Erdogan to step down. Good afternoon. Welcome to News Bulletin. I'm Dania Nizam. President Bashar al-Assad sent a message to Pope Francis conveyed by Minister of State Joseph Swade during his meeting with the Pope's Secretary of State, Archbishop Pietro Parolin. In the message, President al-Assad expressed the Syrian people and leadership's appreciation of the stances of His Holiness regarding the crisis in Syria, highlighting that the crisis will be solved through national dialogue among the Syrians and under a Syrian leadership without foreign intervention, as to enable the Syrians to determine their future and leadership through ballots. The message stressed Syrian government's readiness to participate in the International Conference on Syria, Geneva II, highlighting that combating terrorism that is targeting citizens is a decisive factor in making any peaceful solution to the crisis a success. The message also highlighted that stopping terrorism requires having the countries which are involved in supporting the armed terrorist groups to stop providing any sort of military, logistic or training support, noting that this support was provided by some of Syria's neighbors and other known countries in the Middle East and abroad. President al-Assad stressed the Syrian government's keenness on carrying out its constitutional duty of protecting its citizens, regardless of their race and religion, from the crimes of the takfiri groups that target their homes, schools and places of worship with terrorist bombings or arbitrary shelling. The Syrian Arab army units destroyed terrorist hideouts and gatherings in Douma in Damascus countryside, killing scores of them. Some of the killed terrorists are non-Syrians belonging to the so-called Islam Battalion. The bodies of the terrorists Mehdi al-Unayzi, Salim al-Shumari, Ayad al-Fahd, Bushar Tandar, Abdullah al-Baqar, Saif al-Darawni and Awaid al-Mish'al were identified among the killed terrorists. After leaving heinous crimes in Syria, Iraq, Yemen and Libya, as well as in many other countries in the region, terrorism seems to pose an inevitable threat to the West. The CNN revealed that indicators are clear on the birth of a new al-Qaeda in Europe, as several confessions and statements by the terrorist affiliated to al-Qaeda were published. The American Abu Dujana, who was one of those terrorists from the so-called Islamic State of Iraq and the Levant, said in an interview with the CNN that the banner of "There is no God but Allah," which is of al-Qaeda, will be on top of all parliaments around the globe. "We will establish the law of God in every corner of the world, in Europe, the US, Australia, New Zealand, Asia and Africa." Abu Dujana said. The CNN pointed out that the interview was made with Abu Dujana before he accidentally shot and killed himself. However, during the interview, Abu Dujana asserted his intention, along with the terrorists who were with him, to kill anyone who stands in his way by saying, "We will give our souls for al-jihad in order to enter heaven. We will face all the infidels in the West and everywhere. We will fight anyone who stands in the way of establishing the law of God." According to the CNN, after more than 1,000 days of the war on Syria, the West has finally realized the fact that those who fight in Syria are terrorist groups, some of which are enlisted on the blacklist of terrorism. CNN also refers to several cases where the terrorist groups had committed heinous crimes against the innocent people in Syria, including the case of a man who was interviewed in Al-Raqqa and who recounted how he was tortured so badly by individuals belonging to the so-called Islamic State in Iraq and the Levant that the CNN showed photos of the red and blue patches on his body, revealing the severity of torture received at the hands of the terrorists. UN Secretary-General Ban Ki-moon stressed that there is progress in the operation of destroying the chemical weapons of Syria, despite a delay in moving the chemical weapons out of the country. The joint mission of the Organization for the Prohibition of Chemical Weapons, OPCW, and the UN said in a statement that there will be a limited delay in the transport of the first tranche of the chemical materials from Syria, despite the intensive work with the Syrian government. These had been anticipated to be removed by December 31st. The joint mission pointed out that a number of incidental factors such as the general security situation and the bad weather may affect the limited timetable. On several occasions, the UN and the OPCW stressed Syria's full cooperation with them in eliminating the chemical weapons. The death toll of the explosion that hit the railway station building in Volgograd in southern Russia rose to 18 dead and 40 wounded. The initial reports showed that a suicidal carried out the explosion. As the corruption scandal rocked Erdogan's government, Erdogan threatened the prosecution and the Attorney General in case they continued their investigation over corruption and bribery. Erdogan accused the Board of Judges and the prosecutors of collaborating against him and against his government. Meanwhile, as successive media reports continued revealing the involvement of Erdogan's government in endless corruption, sources confirmed that Bilal Erdogan, Prime Minister Erdogan's son, fled to Georgia, as an arrest warrant against him had been issued, within the framework of the corruption scandal. In response to the tyranny of Erdogan, the leader of the opposition Republican People's Party, Kemal Kılıçdaroğlu, Ihsanoglu said that Erdogan is the head of a corrupt gang, and he covers that corruption. Meanwhile, mass demonstrations continued in major Turkish cities, especially in Istanbul and Ankara, demanding the resignation of Erdogan. As usual, Erdogan's security forces faced the demonstrations with repression, seriously wounding a reporter during a demonstration in Istanbul, and also the correspondent of Aydınlık newspaper was beaten before being arrested by the Turkish police. In addition to the arrest along with 70 other demonstrators. With this, we end the news for today. Thank you for watching us. For more details about Syria and the region and to view this bulletin again, you can always visit our website in English, syriaonline.sy. After the break, it's Vani with our economic and business news. God bless you and long live Syria.